Good day, everyone. Neophyte DAG bringing you another message. And this message, we're going to cover Abraham Lincoln, the 16th president of the United States of America, and the fact that he was black. Yes, Abraham Lincoln was black. And we'll get to the root of it. We're going to go into detail on this one, so bear with me and stay focused. And as always with this series, it's Job 9 verse 24, where it warns us that the wicked and the ungodly, whoever is covering up the faces now, will cover up faces of dark-skinned people who are very important in the history of you. And I'm here to give you the true story of you. But Job 9 verse 24 warns us about that the leaders, the rulers, the prophets, the important people of the children of Lewis, the dark-skinned people, will be covered by the wicked. But to take it a bit further, we're going to talk about Hosea 4 verse 6 and Isaiah 5 verse 13, because these two verses are warning us that we shall fall into destruction and into captivity because of lack of knowledge. And I'm bringing back these knowledge to you, and the importance of these two verses is to emphasize to you, you need to find knowledge. Go out and find more knowledge. Don't prevent yourself from getting knowledge every day, because if you don't get knowledge, you'll continue to be destroyed and kept in captivity, and you don't want that. So seek knowledge every day, and it shall come to you. Can't find something that you're not looking for. So if you look for it, it will find you. Okay, so keep that in mind, because it's lack of knowledge why these lies have been able to continue throughout time without us knowing it, and now it's coming back to our full attention because we looked for knowledge, and the information that's in the knowledge found us. Let's get into Abraham Lincoln. He was born 1809. He died 1865. He was assassinated. 16th president of the United States from 1861 to 1865. He was a United States congressman from the state of Illinois from 1847 to 1849. And he was a state of Illinois congressman, a local congressman for the state from 1834 to 1842. Also, just to give you some more background on Abraham Lincoln, he was born in the state of Kentucky in 1809, and he was a self-educated lawyer. He's a lawyer, but he educated himself for most of his school years. He was the president at the time of the American Civil War, which is April 1861 to April 1865. That was one of the more critical time in American history. The nation went to war with itself, and it was over a lot of different things, including who was going to finance the debt that was being rolled over from the American Revolution, and then whether the South will break away from the North because the South didn't want to help to pay any of that debt, and then also breaking the profit margin of the South by abolishing slavery. So there are different factors that were going back and forth. But what I want you to get from this is that the Civil War wasn't only about freeing Negro slaves. It wasn't about that. It was about debt, the debt that incurred during the American Independence Revolution War, and that debt was being carried over as a debt to whomever America owed at that time. America owed France a lot of money at that time, and the South didn't want to help to pay that debt, even though the South was making a lot of money from the industrialized slavery. They decided to break away from the North, and the North said, no, we're going to pull you back in so you can help to finance that debt. And as part of weakening the South, the North proposed abolishing slavery. So it didn't come because, hey, we felt in our hearts this needed to be done. There are a lot of different factors. So don't hold on to the one factor that's given to you by his story that it was about freeing slaves. No, it was not. But moving on. Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation executive order to abolish slavery in the United States. He signed it September 22nd, 1862. And what that is, he made the order because Congress could not decide on it. No one was agreeing that slavery should be abolished. So he had to step up and say, as the president, I am going to abolish it. And this was the effort now to help break the back of the South, because the South is very powerful and very rich. So in doing that, and then in January of 1863, he actually put it in law. That executive order was put in law. That totally collapsed the South. And that's when the South decided, now, hey, listen, we don't want any part of that United States of America. He was then assassinated in 1865. So that's a brief synopsis of Abraham Lincoln. Now we're going to jump into the meat of why we're here. Abraham Lincoln's father, Thomas Lincoln, was black. Abraham Lincoln's mother, Nancy Hanks, was black. Abraham Lincoln's wife, Mary Todd, was also black. And Abraham Lincoln's vice president, Hannibal Hamlin, at the time that he was elected president, was black. So all the people that were part of Abraham's everyday life, including himself, were black. And that's what we're going to move now to prove that in this message. Let's start out with Abraham Lincoln's father. His name is Thomas Lincoln. And we're going to go to this book. It's called The Life of Abraham Lincoln. It's written by Clifton M. Nichols. And this is a book that's in the Library of Congress. So the Congressional Library, where the United States Congress does its own studying, this book is there. So it's not a book that no one knows about. The entire Congress and Senate and presidents that are currently in office now know about this. I'm just bringing it out to you. In this book, page 12, it talks about Thomas Lincoln, and it gives a description of him on page 12 and page 13. Let's start down below on page 12. Thomas Lincoln. Thomas was dark-skinned, black hair. It's telling you, it's giving you a description of it. I skipped the rest and I just jumped to the meat of it. So Abraham Lincoln's father, Thomas Lincoln, was dark-skinned and he had black hair. So that's one of the first indication that his father was black. So what do we call dark-skinned people now in our modern day time? We call them black. So his father was black. We're going to jump to another book about Abraham Lincoln's father. And this book is called Lincoln the Citizens. And what I want to pull from this, we have identified that his father was dark, was black in our modern day time. Now we're going to cover the myth about white classification, black classification at the time that Abraham Lincoln was president. The father, Thomas Lincoln, far from being a poor white. So hopefully you get what just happened. Before he's dark complexion, now he's being called a poor white. What is going on? I'm sure there's some confusion swirling in your mind. Let me help to ease that confusion. At this time, white was not a color classification. It was a social status classification. If you're from Europe, if you can trace your lineage back to Europe, whether you were dark skin, Caucasian skin, ruddy skin, red skin, you were classified as white. If you were from a native of America or part of the slaves that were transported from other parts of America or the Guinea Coast, Cape Verde, or the Canary Islands, then you were a Negro, hence black classification. So that's where the confusion comes in now in our modern day time, because what I just described to you changed in 1924 with the Racial Integrity Act, where all of that, if you're from Europe, even though you're dark skinned, you were moved now to the category of black. But at this time, when Abraham Lincoln was president, he was considered white because he was from a European descendancy. His ancestors were Europeans. And that's all you had to prove in order to be considered white. Regardless of your complexion, there were many dark-skinned black people coming from Europe, but they were classified as white. And I'll prove that to you. Can't tell you something without being able to prove it. So let's look at the United States Declaration of Intention. It's an immigration form that everyone had to fill out that was coming into America all the way up until 1924. And what I want to bring to your attention is where it says description is, then you see color, you see white, but then complexion, you see dark on both forms. And that's where they're coming from Europe. So on the first form, the form to the left, the person was born in Germany, they're European. And then the other one, the person was born in Netherlands. They're white color, but complexion dark. So all you had to do in order to get the white classification was to be from Europe. White, dark. Modern day time, these are black people, because when the rule changed in 1924, these same people would have now become black and called Negro. Another example that I'll give you, and this one is very profound because I want to make sure that you understand this white category is just a classification of your social status. It's not your complexion back in the time of Abraham Lincoln. We're going to look at the Vermont Phoenix newspaper in April 4th, 1857. And this is an example of a white man, person classified as white, but has dark complexion and is sold as a Negro slave. This was an ad taken out for someone who was a white man sold into slavery. And let's read some portions of the ad. The name of the individual is Barnard. He's son of an immigrant who was Dutch. So it's a Dutch. His father was Dutch. So now he traces ancestry to being a Dutch from Netherlands. Barnard is an excellent violinist. He plays the violin very well. And then he accompanied some actors as a musician, and they went into Maryland and Virginia. He was rather dark complexion. So when you see rather, meaning it's very dark complexion. And his companion representing him to be a Negro. So if you're a white man, how can you be of a rather dark complexion and be presented as a Negro? Again, if you have to go back to the time, at this time, just to be a white man, you had to be from Europe, regardless of your skin color, because Barnard was rather dark complexion. He's very black. He's so black, he could pass off as a Negro. In our modern day time, these two people are the same. They merged them by changing the law in 1924, the Racial Integrity Act. Barnard would not be considered a white man at this time. He would be a black man. But at that point in time, based on the law, he was a white man because he was from Europe. So I hope I've settled this issue about white and black and the timing of it. Anything before 1924, you see white man, don't trust it for being a Caucasian only person. Not a chance. Everyone, whether Caucasian, whether Indian, whether this or that, if you're from Europe, you were white, regardless of your complexion, your hair texture, whatever, you were white. It's only after 1924, you can only be white if you're a Caucasian. All right? So Abraham Lincoln's father was regarded as a poor white, but he's still a black man in our modern day time. Let's move forward. We're going to jump on Abraham Lincoln's mother, Nancy Hank. We're going to go back to this book, The Life of Abraham Lincoln, and it's in the Library of Congress. So what I'm telling you is nothing new to those who are in power. They know this information. And we're going to also cover his wife, Mary Todd, in the same book. Let's start with Nancy. On page 14 of this book, it says Nancy Hanks. She was of brunette with dark hair. So we know the brunette is not talking about her hair. They said her hair is dark. So her brunette, she was a brunette. She was brunette complexion. Same thing for Mary Todd. In chapter 12, it talks about Mary Todd. Her hair, abundant and dark brown in color, she was a brunette. So it tells you again, her hair made a specific color for her hair, and then she was brunette. So don't think her hair is brunette. That's the trick that's being played. She was of a brunette complexion, and her hair was dark brown. It's a way to disguise the person's complexion without telling you. So if you don't go and check to see what brunette is, you won't know. Both of them complexion were brunette. Nancy Hank, Abraham Lincoln's mother, and Mary Todd, Abraham Lincoln's wife, they were both brunette complexion. Let's look at brunette. We go to Webster Dictionary, 1828. Brunette, brown. Brunette, a woman with brown or dark complexion. So the mother, Nancy Hank, dark complexion. Mary Todd, dark complexion. They were both brunette complexion, not their hair, their skin complexion. So this is what I want to point out to you. His wife, his mother were dark skin, brown skin people, whichever way you want to look at it. They were dark complexion people. In our modern day time, they were black. Going to take another look at Abraham Lincoln's mother, Nancy Hank, because there are a couple of tricky words that was being played out, and it's continued to be played out to hide the true complexion of the people associated with Abraham Lincoln. So a new word popped up. Nancy, her complexion was sallow. Her hair was dark. At least the hair matched up, but they gave you a new word, sallow. And this is from Lincoln the Citizen by Henry C. Whitney. This is in the Lincoln Library as well. Let's find the word sallow. We'll go back to Webster 1828. Having a yellowish color, pale sickly color, tinged with dark yellow, a sallow skin. A yellowish color, a dark yellow. So it's a dark yellow complexion. What is a dark yellow complexion? It's a dark skin, a brown skinned person. That's what his mother, Nancy Hank, complexion was, which ties back again to the brunette, dark brown complexion. So these were black people. In our modern day time, they're classified as black. Let's go back to another information about Lincoln's mother, Nancy Hanks. And we're going to take this from the Story Life of Lincoln, a biography composed. So they composed of a lot of true story. 500 true story is complete life history by Wayne Whipple. So they're telling you these are true stories, not lies, true stories. They're in the books, but these books are not presented to you. They're hidden. But now these books are coming to the forefront, and we're finding this information out. Nancy Hank, Lincoln mother, page 19. Nancy, her skin was dark. Her hair was dark brown. Again, dark complexion woman. His father was dark. His mother was dark. Can't get any clearer than that. This brings us to Abraham Lincoln himself. Mother, dark. Father, dark. Wife, dark. Mother and father, two dark people, will have a black child, a dark child. So in this book, the autobiography of Abraham Lincoln, this book as well is in the Library of Congress. It's there. So again, the information is known by all the people that are in Congress, Senate, and the current presidents, and all the people in power. They know this information. It's just not known by you. But the book is in the Library of Congress. Let's see what this book says. This is the autobiography as written by Abraham Lincoln. So I gave you the original writing and then the retranslated in our modern day typography of it. And in the last paragraph of his own autobiography that Abraham Lincoln did, and that's the piece, if you're looking on the written one, the handwritten one, it's the paragraph above the seal. And on the right side, for ease of reading it, it's transcribed in our typewritten English. And here's what it says by Abraham Lincoln himself. If any personal description of me is thought desirable, it may be said I am, and he starts to give his description of himself. And I'm going to jump you to where he says, dark complexion with coarse black hair. In his own words, that's what he's saying. Let me read it again. If any personal description of me is thought desirable, if you desire to know descriptions about me, it may be said, I am dark complexion with coarse black hair, with nappy hair. Dark skin with coarse hair. In his own words, that's what Abraham Lincoln had handwritten in his autobiography, which is now housed in the Library of Congress. Let's go to another book where Abraham Lincoln is going to make some self-confessions to people at the time that he was running for presidency. We'll look at this book, A Self-Made Man, The Political Life of Abraham Lincoln, and this is by Sidney Blumenthal. Page 3 of this book, Abraham Lincoln made a blurted out confession. I used to be a slave, said Lincoln. Lincoln made his own admission to being a slave. Again, he had the characteristics to be either one of two slaves. Either he was an indentured slave, if he's coming from Europe, that's what he would have been, a 7-year indentured slave, or a Negro slave, which is the Native American, whether they're the Indian-looking type or the dark-skinned black Afro-looking type, or the ones who came from the Guinea Coast, Cape Verde, Canary Islands. But in Lincoln's case, he was an indentured slave on a 7-year indentured service, but he made that confession himself. In that same book, page 4, even more startling, Lincoln's self-description as a chattel slave. He represented himself as being a slave, and then now he ran away. He's a fugitive slave because he ran away from that slavery. So he was a runaway slave. That was Lincoln's confession. His other confession, they pulled now from the personal description that he gave in his autobiography, which I just read. I won't reread it again for you. But it's saying he's dark complexion with coarse black hair. They're giving you back his own words. So he made 3 confessions and revelations in this book. First, he was a slave. Second, he was a runaway fugitive slave. And third, he was dark-skinned with coarse hair. So what we get from this, Abraham Lincoln was dark-skinned. In our modern day time, we would call him a black person. The texture of his hair was coarse, and it was black hair. Who has coarse hair in our modern day time? Anytime we use the word coarse hair, we're thinking nappy hair. That must be a black person. Goes without saying. He was black and he had nappy hair. We'll go to another book. Lincoln describing himself in this book of letters that were written by Abraham Lincoln. And it's called Letters and Telegrams by Abraham Lincoln. He made those letters himself, and what's written in the letters were his own words. One of the letters that's in it, he wrote to Josephus Hewitt and he wrote it in February 13th, 1848. And in the letter, which I'll take you to page 119 of that book, he said, "Don't you remember a long black fellow who rode horseback with you?" And then further down he says, "Well, I am that fellow." So he's describing himself as a black fellow. So even Lincoln knew his own color at that time, that he was black. Lincoln's own confession in his letter to Josephus Hewitt, February 13th, 1848. Lincoln was black. He knew he was black. Let's go to the congressional record. Every record, every debate, every representative of Congress get recorded in the congressional records. That's the United States documentation of itself. And in the February 12th, 1927 edition that was issued by Congress, on page 3610 and page 3611, Lincoln's own description of himself was added to the congressional record. So Congress recorded the description where he says, if anyone needs to know my description, here is what it is: dark complexion with coarse hair. So the congressional record recorded this. Again, repeating to you, everyone in Congress knows this. Everyone in Senate knows this. Everyone who's a president, whether former or current president of the United States, knows this. But it's just not told to you. Let's take a look at another book. And I threw this book in because it has a very peculiar title: Abraham Lincoln, a biography for young people. So I'm thinking this is information that young people needed to know at the time when this book was written in 1892. Now, I'm going to go through this and you're going to think to yourself, if you were schooled in this country and as a young person, did any of this was told to you? Because it's a biography for young people. So we would have hoped that the young people would have gotten this information. This book is written by Noah Brooks. This is what this book has to say on page 180. The same description that Lincoln gave of himself in his own autobiography, this book repeated it because young people need to know this about Lincoln according to the book. But this book was pulled out of the reach of young people. If any personal description of me thought desirable, it may be said, I am dark complexion with coarse hair. They're putting back Lincoln's own statement of himself. And they even gave a picture of Lincoln. And if you look, you see the face is dark. They did their best to kind of ease, to disguise it, but it's a dark face. It's darker than his suit that he's wearing. So he's a dark skin complexion person. You just have to know the word that describes him, and then you tie it back to the image. So I'm giving you both. This is another book that was given to us by Benjamin Thomas, and it's called Abraham Lincoln. And if you notice, the tone, his skin complexion, is more agreeable with what the wording skin complexion is. So the picture and the words match. You'll see a lot of other Caucasian, pale skin, fair skin looking images of Lincoln, but going by the words, always go back to the words. The words don't lie that often. They can't lie with the words as much. They can lie with the image to subliminally let you think one thing. Let's go to the words of this book, page 131. It's talking about Lincoln, and it's giving a description of him. His skin was wrinkled, dark, and leathery, dark skin, just like what's on the picture of the book. Is unruly dark hair. Now, who has unruly dark hair? Which set of people? If you get the answer to that question, then you'll know what Lincoln was. He had nappy dark hair. To put it in our modern day term, yes, unruly hair, nappy hair. Another book, because I'm giving you all the description of how they try to change around the complexion of Lincoln. So you know, whichever direction that they turn, it's leading you back to the same thing, that he's a dark-skinned black man. Lincoln the Citizen by Henry C. Whitney, page 40 of that book, talks about Abraham Lincoln again. His skin was of a dirty yellowish brown. Whichever adjective they want to add to it comes back to he's a brown skin. It's a dark skin. Dirty yellow is dark skin. And they add brown to it, brown. So whichever way they want to splice it, it's a black person. He's not a Caucasian, fair skin, pale skin complexion person. We're going to cover another book because I'm going to exhaust this so you know for sure that Abraham Lincoln was black. We're going to jump again to this other book, The Story Life of Lincoln, 500 True Stories by Wayne Whipple, page 43. Abe was now in his 15th year, and down below it starts to talk about his complexion. His complexion was very swarthy. That's why I pulled in this book. That's another word given for his complexion. Rather than just saying, yeah, dark skin, he's a black man. He's swarthy. Let's look at the meaning of swarthy. Webster Dictionary, 1828. Tawniness, a dark complexion. That's the meaning of swarthy. Dark complexion. The second meaning, you want to see the second one? Black, as swarthy African. So he's black. That's what he's telling you. Complexion, black. That's the conclusion from this book. Now we're going to go to a book by Walt Whitman. It's written by Milton Meltzer. It's a biography of Walt Whitman. He was also black, but he was a famous person. He was very famous, and he was good friends of Abraham Lincoln, saw him in the street, knew him personally, lived close to him. And Walt Whitman is giving you now a description of Abraham Lincoln as he sees him and as he said it. So in this book, Walt Whitman, a biography, page 92, it's Walt. Now this is what Walt is saying. Walt said he had a great view of Mr. Lincoln. And this he's describing when Lincoln went to New York and he was walking or parading in front of 30 to 40,000 people. This is what Walt said. His complexion, that's Lincoln's complexion, dark brown complexion. It's giving you a full description of him. His perfect composure, his coolness, his unusual and uncouth height. He was very tall, 6 feet to be exact and above. His dress of complete black, stovepipe hat, the one we normally see him wearing, pushed back on his head, dark brown complexion, seamed and wrinkled, yet canny looking face. So he had dark brown face and complexion. That's what Walt is saying. In another part of the book, going into page 108, Walt often come across Lincoln and he wrote about this account of it. He's always running into Lincoln. I see very plainly Abraham Lincoln, dark brown face. Let's go to page 115. Walt caught sight of the president riding in a carriage. And this is what he thought about the looks of the president. His dark brown face. I'll let you read the rest. That's what I want you to pull out. So 3 different occasions in this one book, Walt is telling you what Abraham Lincoln looks like. Dark brown face, dark brown complexion, in our modern day time, a black man. Let's touch very quickly now on Hannibal Hamlin. This is Lincoln's vice president. Again, he took a lot of abuse, during the run between the Republican and the Democrat during the time that he and Lincoln were running for office of president. And the Republicans, in reading from this book, The Life and Times of Hannibal Hamlin, and this is by his grandson, George Eugene Hamlin. And George wrote, on page 354 of this book, the Republicans were denounced as black Republicans, nigger worshippers, as well as they were called man-hape, Southern renegade, others call them nigger or mulatto. Why would you call a person nigger, mulatto, black Republican, nigger worshiper if they had no relationship to the color of the people that were being categorized as Negroes or mulattoes? And let's find out why. Let's look at down below to see what Rhett, a newspaper editor, had to write about Lincoln and Hamlin. He called them a black Republican. Definitely he said that, but now he specifically targeted Hamlin. He said Hamlin is what we call mulatto. He has black blood in him. And then further down, he said, I see that they stated in other papers, that he's mulatto. So Hamlin got a lot of this accusation thrown at him. The reason why? Because he was black as well. But they were trying to figure out if he was black, of European ancestry, or from Native American ancestries. It made a difference at that time. Because if you're black from Europe, you could maintain that white social status. If you're black from Native America, then you were a Negro/mulatto. Let's look at Hamlin's description as written in the United States Senate record, because all congressmen, all senators, their records, their biography is maintained by the US government. So if you go to senate.gov, you'll find this for Hamlin. And let's read this Robert Brett. We just talked about him. Let's dig in some more as to what he said. He wrote for the Mercury newspaper, and this is what he wrote. Hamlin is what we call a mulatto. He has black blood in him. We already read that. And then George Templeton Strong, who was another reporter, this is what he wrote about Hamlin. His complexion was so swarthy, and we know what swarthy mean already, that the Southerners deemed him a mulatto. Is believable. The man is so black, he looks like a Native American Negro mulatto. That's what they're saying. Because what is swarthy? Dark skin. But Hamlin was so dark skinned that he could easily pass for a mulatto, a Negro slave. Remember what happened to that white man that was sold into slavery? He's dark skinned. He was so dark. He was rather dark that he was mistakenly sold into slavery as a Negro mulatto. Now, I've saved this one for last because this one put the icing on the cake and settled all mystery about Abraham Lincoln's blackness. No dispute. We're going to go to this book. It's called Dear Mr. Lincoln, Letters to the President, and it's edited by Harold Holzer. This book contains almost all the letters that were written to the president during the time of mainly now we're going to focus on during the time of the Civil War, where he started to get a lot of threats from the Southerners who resented the fact that he did and signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This is a letter that came in, and the heading of it, Vile Threats to the Black Nigger. Who is the black nigger in this letter that we're talking about? It was sent to Abraham Lincoln, February 14th, 1861. This was now the beginning time when the Civil War is about to kick off. This person wrote Abraham Lincoln. The person who wrote him, he's called Mr. A.G. Fricks. What Mr. A.G. Fricks had to say. Let's go down to closer to the end of the letter. Abe Lincoln, who would like you, goddamn? You excuse me for using such hard words with you, but you need it. You are nothing but a goddamn black nigger. Want me to read it again? But you need it. You are nothing but a goddamn black nigger. That's what A.G. Fricks was describing the president as. Now, would you make that type of mistake with a Caucasian, fair-skinned, pale-skinned person to mistake them for a black nigger? No, you would not. Because Abraham Lincoln was not Caucasian. He was a dark-skinned black man. And A.G. Fricks found it compelling to mention the fact that Abraham Lincoln, in his mind, was a goddamn black nigger. And I want you to read that note below where it says, this letter, never before published in its entirety, because no one wants you to know this. Where was it discovered or hidden, for lack of a better word, in the files of the Chicago Historical Society? It's locked up in the files. But Mr. Holzer was able to get his hands on it and bring it to the public attention that Abraham Lincoln was black, and people found it very compelling to mention the fact that they considered him a black nigger. Signed, sealed, delivered. Abraham Lincoln was black. Which brings me to the conclusion. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States of America, was black. Abraham Lincoln's father, Thomas Lincoln, was black. In fact, he was a poor white black. Abraham Lincoln's mother, Nancy Hank, was black. Abraham Lincoln's wife, Mary Todd, was black. Abraham Lincoln's vice president, Hannibal Hamlin, was black. They all were black. No way around it, nowhere over it. It's the truth, nothing but the truth, as written in words, and not going by what the eyes is showing you. Always go back to the words. Which brings me to the questions that I want you to ask yourself, because I want you to learn something from this. That if such a big lie was being told and shown to you that Abraham Lincoln was not a dark-skinned person, not a black person, but was showing you that he's a Caucasian, fair-skinned, pale-skinned complexion person, what a big lie told to you for your entire life. Then what other small lies or big lies are told to you and shown to you in the past that is now letting you see yourself as a different person that is impacting your life negatively and even impacting your well-being, your health? And what lies are currently being told to you now, whether small ones or big ones, that is impacting your life, your self-esteem, the way you see yourself, and your health now and in the future? Ask yourself these questions, because if one big lie can be told at that time and no one has come to you who has told you that lie, come back now and telling you the truth, then there's no point in which you can expect those truths to be told to you. So you're going to have to find them yourself, because one lie is going to add up to multiple lies, and you're going to continue on a trend of lies until you break out of that trend, that trail of lies. Lies told at the beginning of America, lies told at the middle point of America, lies being told now as we come to the end time of the liars, where all truth shall come forward and be known by the people that were being lied to. Know that you're being lied to. Watch out for the information that you have already learned, because they're all based on the lies that were told before. You have to clear that plate and go find truth. Study to show thyself approved to know truth, because those that worship the Most High must worship the Most High in spirit, calling down on that energy of the Most High that He has put in you, and in truth. This is what I want to emphasize to you. Get knowledge, seek truth, and it will remove you from bondage and destruction, and it will and shall set you free. Which brings me to this. I want to make sure you get these two verses from the Bible and make them a part of you. 2 Timothy 2 verse 15. Study to show yourself approved unto the word of the Most High, because a workman or workwoman that needeth not be ashamed. You're not ashamed to know truth. Go learn truth, even though everyone is saying, nah, don't get it. That's not true. That's not. Stay with this. Only think of this. Go get your own truth and be able to righteously divide the word of truth from the word of lie. Most High doesn't give you lies. Man gives you lies. So you got to go study and learn the ways of the Most High and show that you are ready to get more knowledge on top of the knowledge that you're seeking. Which brings me to Proverbs chapter 3. Make sure this one is cemented in your mind. We'll look at verse 13. Happy is the man and woman that findeth wisdom, and the man and woman that getteth understanding. Happy you shall be. For the benefit of wisdom and understanding is better than the benefit of silver and the gains of that fine gold. Wisdom and understanding is better than gold and silver. That's what this is telling you. The benefits of it is better than those two. So chasing gold and silver, and this is telling you there's more benefit to chasing wisdom and understanding. What shall you do? You decide. You have the choice. But I'll read on some more in 15. Wisdom and understanding is more precious than rubies, and all the things you can desire are not to be compared to wisdom and understanding. Diamond, pearls, rubies, gold, silver is not as important as wisdom and understanding, and it won't bring you the benefits as wisdom and understanding will bring to you. I rest my point right there. Seek knowledge to know truth. Find wisdom. Get understanding. Get your own understanding. Use these as a platform to springboard you into getting your own knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. With that said, I want to always say to you, stand strong, be strong, and stay strong.